Your life is not complicated. It is overloaded. You added too much. You kept too much. You allowed too much. And now you feel pressure. Not because life is heavy. Because you made it crowded. You do not need more effort. You need less noise. Simplification is control. You remove what does not matter. You keep only what is necessary. And you operate with clarity. You are adding too much. Not because it is necessary. Because you do not stop to decide. You accept tasks quickly. You agree without thinking. You open new loops without closing old ones. This creates overload. Not immediately. Gradually. One extra task feels manageable. Then another. Then another. Soon your system is full. You feel pressure. You feel scattered. You feel behind. This is not a time problem. It is an intake problem. That's the key. You are not controlling what enters your life. So everything enters. And once it enters, it demands attention. It takes space. It competes for focus. Even when you are not working on it, it remains active. This is how complexity grows. You have a choice. You can continue accepting without thinking. Or you can control every addition. Control starts before action. Not after. Most people try to manage overload after it exists. That is too late. You must prevent it. You must slow down before saying yes. Before starting something new. Before opening another task. You pause. Not to hesitate. To evaluate. Stillness is your advantage here. You stop for a moment. You look at what is in front of you. Then you decide. Does this deserve space? If the answer is not clear, it does not enter. This is discipline at the point of entry. It's not about doing more. It's about allowing less. You must break the habit of automatic acceptance. You are used to responding quickly. Someone asks. You agree. Something appears. You engage. An idea comes. You act. This is impulsive behavior. It feels productive. It is not controlled. Impulse leads to accumulation. Accumulation leads to pressure. Pressure breaks your system. So you remove impulse. You replace it with evaluation. Every time something new appears, you pause. You assess. What is the cost? Not just time. Attention. Energy. Focus. Everything has a cost. Most of what you accept is not worth that cost. But you never measure it. So you accept it anyway. You must start measuring. Not precisely. Clearly. If something does not move your life forward, it does not belong. Simple. You must also stop confusing opportunity with necessity. Just because something is available does not mean it should be accepted. Just because you can do something does not mean you should do it. This confusion creates overload. You treat everything as important. Nothing is. Importance must be defined. Not assumed. You define it before accepting anything. You already know what matters. So you compare. Does this align with what matters? If not, it is rejected. Immediately. No delay. Delay creates internal negotiation. Negotiation weakens decisions. You must be direct. Yes or no. No middle state. Middle states create mental clutter. You keep thinking about it. You revisit it. This consumes attention. So you decide once. Then you move on. You don't need their permission. You do not need to explain why you said no. You do not need to justify your limits. Your time is your responsibility. And responsibility requires control.
You must also recognize hidden additions.
Not everything enters as a clear task. Some enter as small actions. Checking something quickly. Looking at something briefly. These seem harmless. They are not. They add up.
They create fragmentation.
You switch attention. You lose focus. Then you take longer to return. This wastes time. So you treat small additions seriously. You do not allow unnecessary actions. If it is not part of your current task, it does not enter. This keeps your system clean. You must also control your language. You say yes too easily. You say I'll do it. You say I'll check it. Without thinking. Your words create commitments. Commitments create load. So, you change your response. You pause before answering.
You give yourself time to evaluate. Then you respond with control.
This changes everything. You are no longer reacting. You are deciding. You must also limit the number of active tasks. You cannot manage unlimited input. No one can. So you define a limit.
A clear number of active priorities.
If something new enters, something else must leave. This forces discipline. You cannot keep adding. You must choose. Choosing creates clarity. Clarity supports execution.
Execution maintains simplicity.
You must also understand this. Every addition creates future work. Even if it seems small. You will need to return to it. Think about it. Complete it. So you treat every addition seriously. You are not just adding a task. You are adding future responsibility.
If it is not worth that, it does not enter.
It's not about capacity. It's about discipline.
You must also train yourself to leave things out.
Not everything needs to be captured. Not every idea needs to be acted on. Some things can be ignored. This is control. You are not reacting to every possibility. You are selecting deliberately. This reduces pressure. Less enters. Less competes. More gets completed. You must also protect your focus window. When you are working, nothing new enters. No new tasks. No new ideas. You capture it quickly if needed. Then you return to the task. You do not switch. This keeps your attention stable. Stability is what allows simplicity. Without it, everything becomes fragmented. You must also reinforce this daily. Not occasionally. Every day, you control what enters. You say no when needed. You pause before accepting. You evaluate before acting. This becomes automatic. You no longer accept without thinking. You filter everything. This is how complexity is prevented. Not by fixing it later. By stopping it early. You are not overwhelmed because life is complex. You are overwhelmed because you allow too much. You stop that now. You control every addition. You protect your system. You maintain clarity. This is how simplicity begins. You learned that overload starts with uncontrolled input. Now it is time to remove what is already inside your system. You are keeping too much. Not because it is useful. Because you are used to keeping it. Tasks. Commitments. Inputs. They stay active long after they lose value. You do not question them. You do not remove them. So they remain. And your system becomes heavy. This is where simplicity breaks. Not at the point of addition. At the failure to remove. That's the key. If you do not remove what no longer serves, everything accumulates. And accumulation creates pressure. You feel it. Too many things open.
Too many things unfinished.
Too many things pulling your attention. This is not complexity. It is excess. You have a choice.
You can continue carrying what is unnecessary.
Or you can remove it and regain control. Most people delay removal. They wait for the right moment. They wait for certainty. That moment does not come. And the system stays overloaded. You must act earlier.
As soon as something loses relevance, it is removed.
Not reduced. Not postponed. Removed. Cleanly.
You must stop negotiating with low-value items.
You already know they do not matter. But you keep them anyway. You tell yourself they might be useful. You tell yourself you already started. That is not logic. It is attachment. Attachment keeps things alive. Discipline removes them. It's not about what you did before. It's about what serves you now.
If it does not serve now, it does not stay.
You don't need their permission. No one needs to approve what you remove. Your system is your responsibility. And responsibility requires decision, not hesitation. You must also remove incomplete states. Things that are started but not finished. They sit in your mind. They create tension. You return to them repeatedly. This drains your attention. So you decide. Complete it. Or remove it. There is no middle.
Middle states create mental clutter.
Clutter weakens focus. So you eliminate it. Every open loop must be closed. You must also stop holding things just in case. This is one of the main causes of overload. You keep tasks that are not needed. You keep information you do not use. This fills your system with noise. Noise reduces clarity. Clarity is what allows simplicity. So you remove anything that does not have a clear purpose. If its value is unclear, it does not stay active. You must also remove regularly. Not once. Repeatedly. Your system is always changing. Things become irrelevant. If you do not review, they stay. So you create a habit. You check what is active. You remove what is no longer needed. This keeps your system clean. A clean system is easier to control. A heavy system creates resistance. Resistance leads to delay. Delay leads to disorder. So you keep it light. You must also act quickly when removing. Slow removal creates friction. You start thinking too much. You start reconsidering. This delays the decision. And the item stays. So you move fast. You identify. You remove. You move on. No extended thought. Clarity does not require analysis. You already know. You must also understand the cost of keeping unnecessary things. They are not neutral. They take attention. They occupy space. They reduce focus. Even when you are not working on them, they remain active. This weakens your system. So removal is not optional. It is required. You must also remove emotional bias. You keep things because of how they feel. Familiar tasks. Old commitments. They feel safe. But they are not useful. You must separate feeling from value. Value decides. Not comfort. If something is comfortable but unnecessary, it is removed. If something is difficult but important, it stays. This is discipline. You must also avoid replacing what you remove too quickly. You clear space. Then you fill it again. This recreates the same problem. Space is not empty. It is controlled. It allows clarity. It allows better decisions. So you protect it. You do not rush to fill it. You use it intentionally. You must also track patterns of what you keep. What do you struggle to remove? That is where your weakness is. You avoid removing certain things. You justify them. This is where you focus. You correct that pattern. You become stronger there. This improves your entire system. You must also reinforce this daily. Not occasionally. Every day, you remove what does not serve. You keep your system light. You prevent accumulation. You maintain clarity. This becomes automatic. You no longer hold unnecessary things. You remove them immediately. This is how simplicity is built. Not by adding structure. By removing excess. You learned that uncontrolled addition creates overload. Now you understand that simplicity requires constant removal. You are no longer keeping everything. You are selecting. You are clearing. You are maintaining a clean system. But even with removal, your system can become complex again through too much input. You must now control what enters your mind. You are taking in too much. Not because you need it. Because it is available. Information is constant. Access is unlimited. So you consume without control. You read. You watch. You check. Again and again. It feels productive. It is not. It is overload. Your mind fills with fragments. Unfinished thoughts. Unapplied ideas. This creates noise. Noise weakens clarity. Clarity is what allows simple action. That's the key. If your input is uncontrolled, your thinking becomes scattered. And when your thinking is scattered, your actions become inconsistent. You have a choice. You can continue consuming without limit. Or you can control what enters your mind. Control begins with awareness. You must see how often you take in new input. Not intentionally. Automatically. You reach for information without purpose. You check something quickly. You open something out of habit. This is impulsive consumption. It divides your attention. You cannot think clearly if your mind is constantly interrupted. So you must reduce input. Not slightly. Deliberately. You must filter before consuming. You do not take in information just because it exists. You decide if it is necessary. If it supports your current objective. If not, it does not enter. This is discipline at the point of attention. You must also stop confusing learning with progress. You consume information and feel like you are moving forward. You are not. Progress comes from execution. Information without application is just accumulation. And accumulation creates complexity. You must shift from consuming to using. Less input. More execution. This simplifies your system. You must also control the timing of input. You do not consume at random moments. You define when it happens. Outside of your work blocks. During controlled periods. This prevents interference. If you allow input during focused work, your attention splits. You lose depth. So you separate. Work time is for execution. Input time is limited. This creates boundaries. Boundaries protect focus. You must also remove unnecessary sources. You have too many channels of input. Notifications. Feeds. Constant updates. They pull your attention repeatedly. You respond without thinking. This creates fragmentation. So you reduce sources. You disable what is not essential. You limit access. You remove triggers. Fewer triggers mean fewer interruptions. This stabilizes your attention. You must also recognize the cost of curiosity without control. You follow every interesting idea. You explore without direction. This leads to distraction. You move away from what matters.
So you contain curiosity.
You capture ideas if needed.
But you do not act on them immediately.
You return to your task. This keeps your focus intact.
You must also stop checking repeatedly.
You look at the same information again and again. Messages. Updates.
Most of it does not change.
But you check anyway. This wastes time. It breaks attention.
So you define checkpoints.
Specific times. Outside those times, you do not check. This reduces noise. You must also control internal input. Your own thoughts. You generate ideas constantly. You start thinking about other tasks. You plan. You analyze. During execution. This splits your attention. So you apply stillness. You notice the thought. You do not follow it. You return to the task. This is active control. You are not stopping thinking. You are directing it.
You must also simplify your information flow.
You do not need constant updates. You do not need to know everything. You need what is relevant. Nothing more. Excess information creates hesitation. Too many options. Too many ideas. You delay action. So you reduce. You keep only what supports execution. Everything else is removed. You must also avoid input before action. You start your work by consuming. This delays execution. It fills your mind with noise before you begin. So you reverse it. You act first. You execute. Then, if needed, you consume with purpose. This keeps your system clean.
You must also train your tolerance for silence.
Most people fill every moment with input. They cannot stay without stimulation. So they consume constantly. This weakens attention. You must be able to sit without input. To think clearly. To act without distraction. This is stillness as a skill. You develop it through practice. You remove unnecessary input. You allow quiet. This strengthens your focus. You don't need their permission. No one decides what enters your mind. You choose. You filter. You control. This creates independence. You are no longer reacting to information. You are selecting it. That is control. You must also reinforce this daily. Not occasionally. Every day, you limit input. You filter. You reduce. You protect your attention. This becomes automatic. You no longer consume without thinking. You control what enters.
And your mind becomes clearer.
Clear thinking supports simple action. Simple action maintains control. This is how simplicity grows. Not through more information. Through less noise.
You learned that removing excess creates space. Now you understand that controlling input protects that space.
Your mind is no longer overloaded. It is focused. But even with reduced input, you can still lose clarity if you divide your attention. You must now learn to focus on one thing at a time. You are dividing your attention. Not because you need to. Because you are used to it. You switch between tasks. You check multiple things. You try to do more at once. This feels efficient. It is not. It weakens everything. Your focus breaks. Your progress slows. Your results drop. This is not productivity. It is fragmentation. That's the key. When your attention is split, your execution becomes shallow. You touch many things. You complete none with precision. And you carry everything forward. This creates pressure. Not because the work is hard. Because it is unfinished. You have a choice. You can continue dividing your attention, or you can direct it fully to one thing. Control requires focus, not partial focus. Complete focus. You must stop multitasking, not reduce it. Stop it. Multitasking is not a skill. It is a habit. And it is a destructive one. You must replace it with single task execution. One task. One objective. One direction. Nothing else exists in that moment. This is how clarity is maintained. You must also define the task before starting. Not loosely. Specifically. What exactly are you doing? If you cannot answer that clearly, your attention will drift. So you define the action. You make it precise. Then you begin. This anchors your focus. Without definition, you move between steps. You lose direction. You must also remove all competing inputs, even small ones. A quick check. A brief switch. These seem harmless. They are not. Each one breaks your focus. And once broken, it takes time to return. So you eliminate them completely. During a task, nothing else enters. No exceptions. You don't need their permission. You do not need to respond immediately. You do not need to check everything. If it is not part of the task, it does not exist in that moment. This protects your attention. You must also control the urge to switch. It will appear. You will feel bored. You will feel resistance. You will want to move to something else. This is the moment that defines discipline. You do not follow the urge. You pause. You observe it. Then you return to the task. Stillness gives you that control. Without stillness, you react automatically. With stillness, you choose. You must train this response. Not once. Repeatedly. Each time you stay, your focus becomes stronger. Each time you switch, it becomes weaker. You are training your attention with every action. You must also complete what you start. Partial work creates mental load. You think about it later. You return to it. This wastes time. Completion removes that load. It clears your system. So you stay until the task is finished. Or until the defined block ends. Not until you feel like stopping. Feeling is not a signal. Structure is. You follow the structure. You must also reduce the number of active tasks. Too many tasks create pressure. They compete for attention. You think about all of them. You complete none effectively. So you limit your active focus. Few tasks. Clear priority. This increases depth. Depth improves quality. Quality reduces rework. Rework wastes time. So focus is efficient. Not slow. Precise. You must also control transitions between tasks. Do not switch abruptly. You pause. You close the current task. You define the next one. Then you begin. This maintains clarity. Without this, you carry confusion forward. Confusion breaks focus. So you reset between tasks. Briefly. With intention. You must also avoid starting multiple things at once. You open several tasks. You make small progress on each. This creates fragmentation. Instead, you finish one. Then you move to the next. Sequential execution. This builds momentum. Momentum supports discipline. You continue because you are already moving forward. You must also recognize false productivity. You are active. But you are not progressing. You switch tasks. You respond quickly. You feel busy. But nothing is completed. This is a trap. You must measure completion, not activity. Completion is what matters. Everything else is noise.
You must also train your ability to stay with difficulty.
Important tasks are not always easy.
They require effort. They create resistance.
So you want to leave. You want to switch to something easier. You must not. You stay. You continue. Even when it is uncomfortable. This builds strength.
Each time you stay, your discipline increases.
Each time you leave, it weakens. You must choose correctly. You have a choice. Stay or switch. Stay builds control. Switch creates disorder. You must stay. You must also protect your focus blocks. Define time. Single task. No interruption.
This is where real progress happens.
Not in scattered moments.
In controlled blocks.
You respect them. You defend them.
This is how simplicity is maintained.
You are not doing many things. You are doing one thing well. Then moving forward. This keeps your system clean. Clear. Effective. You learned that limiting input protects your mind.
Now you understand that focus protects your execution.
You are no longer dividing your attention. You are directing it fully.
But even with strong focus, your system can still become heavy if you are constantly deciding.
You must now reduce unnecessary decisions. You are making too many decisions. Not because they are important. Because you never removed them. Small choices. Repeated constantly. What to do next. When to start. How to proceed. You think this is normal.
It is not controlled.
Every decision takes energy. Not physical. Mental. And that energy is limited. When you spend it on small things, you have less for what matters. This is why your focus weakens. Not because the work is difficult. Because you are already drained. That's the key. Decision fatigue breaks discipline. You start strong. Then you hesitate. Then you avoid. Not because you lack ability. Because you spent your energy deciding too much. You have a choice. You can continue deciding everything in the moment. Or you can remove unnecessary decisions. Control comes from reduction. Not adding more options. Removing them. You must standardize what does not need thought. Simple actions. Repeated daily. They do not require creativity. They require consistency. So you define them once. Then you repeat them. No variation. This removes friction. You are not thinking. You are executing. You must also decide in advance. Not during the day. Before it begins. You define your priorities. You assign your blocks. When the time arrives, you do not decide again. You act. This protects your attention. In the moment, you are influenced. You are reactive. Before the moment, you are clear. So you make decisions early. Then you follow them. It's not about flexibility. It's about discipline. You must also eliminate optional tasks. Options create hesitation. You look at several possibilities. You compare. You delay. This wastes time. So you reduce options. You define what exists. Nothing else is considered. This creates speed. Not rushed speed. Clear execution. You must also remove repeated decisions. You decide the same thing again and again. When to check something. When to start something. This is unnecessary. You decide once. Then you fix it into your system. Now it is automatic. You follow it without thinking. This saves energy. Energy is redirected to execution.
You must also control transitions.
You finish one task. Then you stop to decide the next. This creates a gap. Gaps lead to drift. Drift invites distraction. So you define transitions in advance. Task A ends. Task B begins.
No pause for decision.
Only execution. This maintains momentum. Momentum reduces resistance.
You continue because the path is clear.
You must also reduce micro-decisions during work. You question small steps. You reconsider actions. This slows you down. You already defined the task. So you trust the process. You move forward. No constant evaluation. Evaluation happens outside the block. Execution happens inside. This keeps your attention stable. You must also remove emotional decisions. You change direction based on how you feel. You delay because you feel resistance. You switch because you feel bored. This breaks your system. Emotion is unstable. It cannot guide your structure. You must follow what is defined, not what you feel. It's not about preference. It's about discipline. You must also simplify your choices. Too many variables create confusion. You analyze too much. You delay action. So you reduce variables. Clear rules. Clear actions. This removes uncertainty. Uncertainty creates hesitation. Hesitation breaks execution. You must eliminate it. You must also stop seeking perfect decisions. You wait for certainty. You want the best option. This delays action. You do not need perfect. You need clear.
A clear decision executed consistently is stronger than a perfect decision delayed.
You must act. Then adjust if needed. Adjustment is easier than hesitation.
You must also train your response speed.
Not rushed. Decisive. You see the situation. You apply your rule. You move forward. This becomes automatic. You do not pause unnecessarily. You do not overthink. You act with clarity. You don't need their permission. No one needs to validate your decisions. You define your system. You follow it. This creates independence. You are not influenced by external noise. You are guided by your structure. That is control. You must also reinforce this daily. Not occasionally. Every day, you reduce decisions. You standardize. You define. You execute. This becomes your default. You no longer hesitate. You move with clarity. You preserve your energy. And that energy is used where it matters. This is how simplicity becomes stable. Not through effort. Through reduction. You learned that focusing on one task strengthens execution. Now you understand that reducing decisions protects that focus. You are no longer thinking about every step. You are following a system. But even with fewer decisions, your environment can still create friction if it is not simple. You must now simplify what surrounds you. Your environment is adding friction. Not because it is complex. Because it is uncontrolled. Objects everywhere. Inputs everywhere. No defined structure. This forces your attention to react. You sit down to work. Your eyes move. Your mind follows. Small distractions. Constant interruptions. You lose clarity before you even begin. This is not a focus problem. It is an environment problem. That's the key. Your surroundings shape your behavior. Not by force. By influence. What is visible pulls attention. What is accessible invites action. If your environment is noisy, your mind becomes noisy. If your environment is clear, your thinking becomes stable. You have a choice. You can keep working inside disorder. Or you can design a space that supports control. You must remove everything that does not serve your current function. Not rearrange. Remove. Rearrangement keeps volume. Removal reduces it. This is how simplicity begins. You look at your space. You ask one question. What here is unnecessary? Then you act. Immediately. You do not delay. Delay allows attachment. Attachment keeps things in place. You must break that pattern. You must also define positions. Every object has a place. Not approximate. Exact. When something has no defined position, it becomes random. Random placement creates random attention. This weakens focus. So you assign locations. You return items immediately after use. This prevents accumulation. You must also control visibility. Not everything should be seen. Only what supports your current task remains visible. Everything else is stored. Out of sight. This reduces visual noise.
Visual noise drains attention.
Even when you think you are focused, your mind is processing what it sees. This consumes energy.
Energy should be used for execution.
So you reduce what is visible. You must also control accessibility. If something is easy to reach, you will use it. Not always intentionally. Often out of impulse. So you design access points. Distractions are not within reach. Tools for your task are immediate. This shapes behavior. You are not relying on willpower. You are using structure. You must also simplify your digital environment. Most people ignore this. Open tabs. Constant notifications. Unorganized files. This creates the same problem as physical clutter. Your attention is pulled in multiple directions. So you apply the same rule. Reduce. Close what is not needed. Disable what interrupts. Define clear structure for your digital space. This stabilizes your thinking. You must also remove unfinished signals. Objects left out. Notes scattered. Tasks visible but incomplete. They create mental tension. Your mind registers them as open loops. You return to them repeatedly. This breaks focus. So you contain unfinished work. You store it in a defined system. Not in your environment. This keeps your attention on what matters now. You must also maintain your environment continuously. Not occasionally. Small corrections. You use something. You return it. You finish a task. You reset the space. Nothing is left unresolved. This prevents disorder from building. You must also eliminate emotional attachment to objects. You keep things because they feel familiar. Not because they are useful. This creates excess. You must separate function from feeling. If something does not serve a purpose, it does not stay. Simple. You must also protect empty space. You remove clutter. You create space. Then you feel the urge to fill it. This recreates the problem. Space is not a gap. It is control. It allows clarity. It supports focus. So you protect it. You do not fill it without purpose. You must also recognize how environment shapes identity. If you live in disorder, you begin to accept disorder. If you operate in a controlled space, discipline becomes natural. Your behavior aligns with your surroundings. So you design your environment intentionally. You do not accept default conditions. You create conditions that support your system. You don't need their permission. No one decides how your space should function. You define it. You enforce it. This creates independence. You are no longer reacting to your environment. You are using it. That is control. You must also reinforce this daily. Not occasionally. Every day, you maintain your environment. You remove what is unnecessary. You return what was used. You protect your space. This becomes automatic. You no longer operate inside noise. You operate inside clarity. And that clarity supports everything you do. This is how simplicity becomes stable. Not through effort. Through design. You learned that reducing decisions protects your energy. Now you understand that your environment must support that control. Your space is no longer working against you. It is aligned with your system. But even with a clear environment, your time can still become scattered if it is not structured. You must now control how your time is used. Your time is not structured. That is why it feels scattered. You move from one thing to another. You start without clear limits. You stop without clear endings. This creates drift. Drift breaks control. You think you are working. But your effort is spread. Nothing is clearly defined. Nothing is fully completed. That's the problem. Time without structure becomes uncontrolled. And uncontrolled time leads to complexity. You have a choice. You can continue moving without limits. Or you can define exactly how your time is used. Control requires boundaries. Not vague ones. Clear ones. You must work in defined blocks. Each block has a purpose. Not multiple. One direction. One objective. This removes confusion. When the block begins, you already know what to do. No hesitation. No searching. Execution starts immediately. You must also define the length of the block. Not open-ended. Open-ended time leads to loss of focus. You start strong. Then you slow down. Then you drift. Because there is no limit. Limits create urgency. Not pressure. Clarity. You know when the work begins. You know when it ends. This keeps your attention stable. You must also respect the boundary. When the block starts, you begin. No delay. When the block ends, you stop. No extension. Overextending breaks your system. It creates imbalance. It reduces consistency. You follow the structure. Not your feeling. You must also remove interruptions completely. During a block, nothing else exists. No checking. No switching. If something tries to enter, it is rejected. Immediately. You don't need their permission. You do not need to respond in the moment. You do not need to adjust your block for everything. Your time is defined. You protect it. This is how control is built. You must also prepare before the block starts. You do not begin in confusion. You define the task clearly. What exactly will be done? If this is unclear, your attention will drift. So you decide before starting. Then you execute. No mid-block planning. Planning happens before. Execution happens inside. This separation is critical. You must also control transitions between blocks. You do not jump randomly. You finish one. You pause briefly. You define the next. Then you begin. This keeps your system stable. Without this, you carry confusion forward. Confusion weakens focus. You must also limit how many blocks you run per day. Too many blocks create fatigue. Too few create underuse. You must find balance. Not perfect balance. Controlled balance. Enough to progress. Not enough to overload. This maintains sustainability. You must also include recovery. Not random breaks. Defined pauses. Between blocks. These are not distractions. They are resets. You step away. You clear your attention. No input. Stillness is used again. You allow your mind to settle. This prepares you for the next block. Without this, your attention degrades. Your performance drops. So you respect the cycle. Focus. Pause. Focus again. This creates rhythm. A stable rhythm. Not chaotic effort. You must also stop starting blocks without commitment. You begin, but you are not fully engaged. You leave early. You switch tasks. This breaks discipline. When a block starts, you commit fully. Until the end. No negotiation. This builds trust in your system. You know you will follow through. You must also track your blocks. Not loosely. Clearly. Did you complete it? Did you stay focused? This gives you feedback. Feedback allows correction. Correction maintains control. You must also avoid emotional pacing. You work harder when you feel motivated. You slow down when you feel resistance. This creates inconsistency. Your pace must be stable. Defined by structure. Not by feeling. You follow the block as planned. Regardless of mood. This builds discipline. You must also understand this. Time blocks are not restriction. They are clarity. They remove uncertainty. They define your actions. This allows you to move with precision. You are not guessing. You are executing. You have a choice. Follow structure or follow impulse. Structure creates control. Impulse creates disorder. You choose structure. Every time. You must also reinforce this daily. Not occasionally. Every day, you define your blocks. You follow them. You protect them. This becomes automatic. You no longer drift. You move with direction. And your time becomes simple. Clear. Controlled. Effective. You learned that your environment must support your system. Now you understand that your time must be structured within that system. Your actions are no longer random. They are placed. But even with structured time, your system can still become complex if you overthink and add emotional weight. You must now remove that layer. You are making things heavier than they are. Not because they are complex. Because you add layers to them. You think too much. You analyze too long. You replay situations. This creates weight. Not real weight. Mental weight. And that weight slows you down. You hesitate. You delay. You avoid. Not because the task is difficult. Because your mind made it complicated. That's the key. Complexity is often created, not required. You add interpretation. You add emotion. You add meaning that is not necessary. And your system becomes unstable. You have a choice. You can continue reacting emotionally. Or you can respond with clarity. Control requires reduction. Not only of tasks. Of internal noise. You must stop overprocessing simple situations. A task is a task. It does not need layers. It does not need analysis. It needs execution. You must recognize when you are adding complexity. You start thinking about outcomes. You imagine problems. You create scenarios. This is not preparation. It is distraction. You move away from action. So you interrupt it. You notice the thought. You pause. Then you return to the task. Stillness gives you that ability. You are not controlled by your thoughts. You observe them. You choose what to follow. This is a trained behavior. You must repeat it. You must also simplify your decisions. You add emotional weight to choices. You question too much. You look for certainty. This delays action. You do not need certainty. You need clarity. Clarity comes from defined rules. You apply the rule. You act. No extended thinking. This reduces internal conflict. You must also stop reacting to small problems. Something goes wrong. You respond emotionally. You feel frustration. You feel pressure. This expands the problem. Now it is no longer small. It is amplified. You must reduce your response. You pause. You look at the situation. You correct what is needed. Then you continue. No reaction. Only adjustment. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. You must also eliminate unnecessary internal dialogue. You talk to yourself constantly. You question your actions. You justify delays. This creates noise. Noise weakens clarity. You do not need constant commentary. You need direction. So you reduce it. You define the action. Then you execute. No internal discussion. You must also remove emotional attachment to outcomes. You want results quickly. You think about the result while you are working. This creates pressure. Pressure breaks focus. You rush. You make mistakes. So you detach. You focus only on execution. Results come later. Execution is what you control. That is where your attention stays. You must also simplify how you view problems. Not everything is significant. Most issues are small. But you treat them as large. This creates unnecessary stress. You must reduce them to their real size. What is actually required? Usually, a simple correction. So you apply it. Then you move on. No expansion. No added meaning. You must also control emotional pacing. You rush when you feel pressure. You slow down when you feel resistance. This creates inconsistency. Your pace must be stable. Defined by structure. Not by feeling. You follow the system. Regardless of mood. This builds reliability. You must also stop seeking emotional comfort in complexity. You add steps. You add thinking. Because it feels like you are doing more. This is false effort. Real control is simple. Clear action. Direct execution. Nothing extra. You must remove everything unnecessary. Even in your thinking. You must also train your response to uncertainty. You do not know everything. You do not need to. You pause. You choose the next clear step. You act. Then you adjust. This is controlled progression. Not overthinking. You must also protect your mental space. You do not allow every thought to expand. You filter. You keep what supports action. You remove what does not. This keeps your system clean. You don't need their permission. No one decides how you think. You control your attention. You decide what matters. This creates independence. You are no longer reacting to internal noise. You are directing your mind. That is control. You must also reinforce this daily. Not occasionally. Every day, you simplify your thinking. You remove unnecessary layers. You reduce your response. You act with clarity. This becomes automatic. You no longer complicate simple actions. You execute directly.
And your system becomes lighter,
Faster. More controlled. You learned that structured time gives direction.
Now you understand that removing emotional complexity protects that direction.
Your actions are no longer heavy. They are clear.
But even with clarity, your system will fail if you try to manage more than you can sustain. You must now reduce to what you can actually maintain.
You are holding more than you can sustain. Not because it is required. Because you do not limit yourself. You accept responsibilities. You keep commitments. You maintain too many active elements.
At first, it feels manageable.
Then it starts to break. You miss steps. You delay tasks. You lose consistency. This is not failure. It is overload. That's the key.
If you take on more than you can maintain, your system becomes unstable.
It does not matter how disciplined you are. Excess will break consistency. You have a choice. You can continue expanding without limits. Or you can reduce to what you can sustain. Sustainability is control. Not intensity. Consistency over time. You must stop measuring yourself by how much you carry. More is not better. More creates pressure. Pressure leads to inconsistency. Inconsistency destroys structure. So you reduce. Not randomly. Deliberately. You look at everything you are maintaining. Tasks. Commitments. Systems. Then you ask one question. Can I sustain this daily without losing control?
If the answer is no, it does not stay.
Simple. You must also stop overestimating your capacity. You believe you can handle more. You add one more task. One more responsibility. This creates overload. Not immediately. Over time. So you define your limits clearly. Not based on optimism. Based on reality. What can you repeat daily without breaking your system? That is your limit. You do not exceed it. You must also remove unstable commitments. Things you cannot execute consistently. They stay incomplete. They create pressure. You think about them. You return to them. This drains your attention. So you remove them. Or you redefine them. Smaller. More controlled. So they can be sustained. You must also simplify your systems. You create complex processes. Too many steps. Too many rules. This increases friction. Friction leads to avoidance. Avoidance breaks consistency. So you reduce your systems. Only what is necessary remains. Few steps. Clear sequence. This makes execution easier. Ease supports repetition. Repetition builds control. You must also remove conditional discipline. You act when you feel ready. You act when conditions are good. This creates inconsistency. Your system must work regardless of conditions. You follow it every day. Not only when it feels easy. This creates stability. You must also reduce variation. You change your approach frequently. You try new methods. This resets your progress. You lose consistency. So you keep what works. You repeat it. No constant changes. Stability is more valuable than novelty. You must also define minimum execution. Not maximum. Maximum is not sustainable. You cannot operate at peak intensity every day. So you define the minimum standard. The smallest version of the system that must be completed daily. No exception. This protects continuity. Even on difficult days, you maintain your system. This is discipline. You must also avoid stacking responsibilities. You add multiple new things at once. This overloads your system instantly.
So you introduce change slowly,
one addition at a time. Then you stabilize it. Only then you consider adding more. This keeps your system balanced. You must also remove comparison. You look at others. You try to match their volume.
This leads to overextension.
Your system is not theirs. Your limits are not theirs.
You define your own capacity.
And you respect it. You don't need their permission. No one decides how much you should carry. You decide. You enforce it. This creates independence. You are not driven by external pressure.
You are guided by your own structure.
That is control.
You must also monitor your system daily.
Not occasionally. You check if everything is still sustainable. If something becomes heavy, you reduce it. Immediately. No delay. Delay allows overload to grow. You must also accept that less is stronger. Fewer tasks. Clear focus. Consistent execution. This produces better results over time. More tasks. Divided attention. Inconsistent execution. This produces instability. So you choose less. Every time. You have a choice. Carry everything and lose control.
Or carry less and maintain discipline.
You choose discipline. You must also reinforce this daily. Not occasionally. Every day, you reduce to what you can sustain. You protect your limits. You maintain consistency. This becomes automatic. You no longer overload your system. You operate within control. And your life becomes simpler. More stable. More effective. You learned that removing emotional complexity creates clarity. Now you understand that sustainability protects that clarity over time. Your system is no longer overloaded. It is controlled.
But even with the right amount, your system will fail if you do not maintain it consistently.
You must now ensure that simplicity stays in place. You built a simple system. Now you must keep it simple. This is where most people fail. They simplify once.
Then they allow complexity to return.
Not all at once. Gradually. One extra task. One unnecessary step. One exception. It seems small. It is not. That is how systems break. That's the key. Simplicity is not created once. It is enforced daily. If you do not protect it, it disappears. You have a choice. You can maintain what you built. Or you can allow it to decay. There is no neutral state. You are either reinforcing or you are losing control. You must stop thinking in terms of setup. This is not something you finish. This is something you repeat. Every day. Without exception. You must begin with a daily reset. At the end of each day, you review your system. You remove what should not remain. You confirm what stays active. You define the next actions. This is your baseline. If you skip this, disorder starts to build. So you do it daily. No negotiation. You must also enforce a strict entry rule. Nothing new enters your system without evaluation. You pause before adding. You check alignment. If it does not support your structure, it is rejected. Immediately. No delay. Delay creates acceptance. You must protect the boundary. You must also apply a one in, one out rule. If something new enters, something else leaves. This keeps your system balanced. Without this, volume increases. And simplicity is lost. You must keep volume controlled. At all times. You must also maintain your environment daily. Not in large efforts. In small corrections. You use something. You return it. You finish a task. You reset your space. Nothing is left open. This prevents accumulation. You must also protect your time blocks. Your schedule is not flexible to impulse. It is defined. You follow it. If something tries to interrupt, it is delayed or removed. You protect your time. This protects your system. You must also track adherence. Not results. Adherence. Did you follow your structure today? Yes or no? If yes, you maintained control. If no, you correct it immediately. No delay. This keeps your system stable. You must also define a recovery protocol. You will break structure at times. This is expected. What matters is your response. You do not restart tomorrow. You correct immediately. You return to the system with the next action. This prevents drift. Drift is what destroys consistency. You must stop it early. You must also eliminate exceptions. You allow small deviations. You tell yourself it is temporary. It becomes a pattern. Patterns define your system. So you remove exceptions. You follow the standard. Every time. It's not about flexibility. It's about discipline. You must also reinforce your identity. You are not someone trying to stay simple. You are someone who operates simply. That is the difference. Your behavior reflects that identity. You remove excess automatically. You reject unnecessary input. You follow structure without hesitation. This becomes natural. You must also maintain space. Not just create it. You protect empty space in your system. Time. Attention. Environment. You do not fill it without purpose. Space allows. Clarity. Clarity supports control. You must defend it. You don't need their permission. No one decides how your system works. You define it. You enforce it. This creates independence. You are not reacting to life. You are directing it. That is control. You must also repeat this daily. Not occasionally. Every day, you reset. You remove. You reinforce. You protect your system. This becomes automatic. You no longer rebuild simplicity. You live inside it. This is the final shift. You are not managing complexity anymore. You are preventing it. At all times. You removed excess. You controlled input. You focused your attention. You reduced decisions. You simplified your environment. You structured your time. You removed emotional weight. You limited what you carry. Now you maintain it. This is what keeps your life stable. Not effort. Not intention. Discipline. From this point forward, you do not return to complexity. Your life is now under control. Not because it changed. Because you removed what made it heavy. You no longer accept everything. You no longer keep what does not matter. You reduce. You focus. You act with clarity. Nothing unnecessary remains active. Your attention is not divided. Your time is not scattered. Everything you do has purpose. This is not temporary. This is how you operate now. You do not add without thinking. You do not keep without reason. If something does not belong, it is removed. Immediately. You do not complicate decisions. You do not overthink actions. You simplify. Every day. From this point forward, your life reflects discipline. Not effort. Not pressure. Discipline. Maintain it.